Has the president given any advice that he should not speak about Hawaii at this point? Because when he spoke the other day, he added that to planned remarks. The death toll is now roughly tripled. It's now the worst in history. He had an opportunity, he could have stopped by to see us when he arrived back. Do you expect that he will have any kind of standalone comments about the new level of loss and devastation?
So you could expect to hear from the president on this issue. Clearly, it is something that is deeply concerning to him when it comes to the wildfires that we have seen in Maui. That's why we again had the administrator here. That's why she was on TV the last couple of days, being on the ground. She can speak directly to this, right? Being on the ground.
I'm asking about the president's
No, I just said you'll hear from the president on this. I don't have anything to announce at this time, but certainly he's the president, right? You're going to hear from him. You heard from him on Thursday, and then you've heard from the administrator for the past several days. And so what the president wants to make sure is that Maui and has the government of Hawaii has everything that they need to support the people on the ground. It's been a devastation as we have seen. You've just mentioned the loss of life. You just heard from the administrator who has said that she has been on the ground for 2 whole days, and that we have been there since day one. You heard that there's 300 personnel on the ground, so this is something that the president takes very seriously. And you've heard from the governor of Hawaii saying how he appreciates the efforts and what we've been able to do from the federal government. Of course, you're going to hear from the president. Don't have anything to share at this time, but let's not forget, we did hear from him on Thursday, right, when he was in Utah ahead of talking about the PACT Act, which is, as you know, it was a year anniversary, an issue that is incredibly important to many Americans, and he took that time to speak to it. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from the president. Go ahead.
Aside from the statement from the president, has President Biden spoken to any family members of wildfire victims or plans to in the future?
I don't have any calls to speak to at this time, but I can say that, as you know, he's heard from the governor a couple times. He's been updated by the administrator a couple times over the past couple days, and he is staying in close communication and close touch with the administrator, and also his team is regularly updating him on what is occurring.
Secondly, a number of Democrats and progressives have called for this moment to be labeled a climate emergency. Has the president considered that justification, that label, for this instance?
So a couple of things. I know he's been asked this question a couple of times. I've been asked a question a couple of times. This is a president who has taken the climate crisis very seriously. He has called it an emergency since day one, saying that it is climate change is one of the 4 crises that we had to deal with coming in. He had to deal with coming into the administration, and he sees it as an existential threat of our time. And for that reason, what he did automatically was declare climate as a basis for emergency action under the Defense Production Act. Let's not forget what that does. It set aside $500 million from DPA to jumpstart heat pump manufacturing and build out our electric grid. It deployed tens of millions more from DPA to stand up solar manufacturing and source critical materials for EVs, electric vehicles, and use DPA to restart a factory to produce equipment to fight wildfires made worse by climate change. So this is something that the president has taken very seriously. And if you think about the Inflation Reduction Act, as you hear me speak to many times, we're about to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of that, which has given the most investment in dealing with climate change than any other piece of legislation. And what Republicans in Congress are trying to do, they're trying to take that away. They're trying to repeal IRA, and that is a problem. And so while we're trying to deal with this existential threat, this climate change crisis, the president is doing everything that he can to make sure that we're dealing with this in a way that actually leads to results, and that's what the president's going to continue to do.
Hi. On Hawaii, has the president been briefed specifically on the issues surrounding the local response, such as the fact that the alarm didn't go off?
I'm sorry, the music distracted me. I'm sorry.
So has the president been briefed specifically on the issues surrounding the local response, such as the fact that the alarm didn't go off, or the fact that some people are saying that there wasn't a clear evacuation plan?
So look, I know that there's an investigation going on that particular question that you're asking me, so I'm not going to get ahead of that. You got control of that, my friend? Okay. All right. There's only a briefing happening right now. Okay. And so there's going to be investigation done on that. I'm not going to get ahead of that. So certainly would refer you to the state officials. What we're focused on, and I've been very clear. The administrator has been very clear on providing residents of Hawaii with all of the support and resources that they need at this time. And so that's going to be our focus. And we'll let the local government deal with the investigation.
And on Hawaii, how does the White House respond to critics who have suggested that the president should not have been vacationing at the beach over the weekend as the Maui crisis became the worst wildfire in a century?
So a couple of things, and I've said this multiple times. The president is certainly deeply concerned about the people in Maui, to the point where he has mobilized a whole of government approach here, as he has done many times to deal with these wildfires in Hawaii from the beginning. You've heard directly from the administrator. From day one, FEMA has been on the ground dealing with this. There's more than 300 FEMA personnel. We've talked about the 50,000 meals. We've talked about the 75,000 liters of water, the thousands of cots that are out there and blankets. And there is more than a dozen federal agencies who are dealing with this issue right now that we're currently seeing in Maui, and it is a devastating sight. And the president and the first lady has been very clear about offering certainly their condolences and making sure that we continue this whole of government approach. That is not going to stop. The president has also committed to being there for the government of Hawaii, the people of Maui, for as long as it takes. And sadly, we have seen this before. And so, look, you heard yesterday he received 2 updates from the FEMA administrator. Criswell was on, as she's on the ground, as you just heard. As Governor Green stressed yesterday as well, within 6 hours of receiving Hawaii's request, President Biden signed a major disaster declaration and ordered all available federal resources in the state to help with the response. And Governor Green described this as having provided amazing support for recovery, because the president was able to do that within those 6 hours. Senator Horino, who I said the president spoke to just last night, he thanked the president for the immediate support of federal agencies have delivered for residents of Hawaii, and so has Senator Schatz. And so. Look, you heard from the president. I'm going to quote him from what he said on Thursday, which is he's directed what we surge support of these brave firefighters and first responders and emergency personnel working around the clock. I'm going to make sure the state has everything it needs from the federal government to recover, because the president is deeply concerned and is going to continue to be there for the people of Maui, the government of Hawaii, for as long as it takes, and that is his commitment.
So should the American people be seeing the president on the phone, working the phones, talking to officials, rather than seeing him on the beach?
You all have gotten full reports on who the president has connected with. You all have heard from us when the president has talked to the governor, you heard from me about talking to the senator, you heard directly from the administrator. And you've heard from the governor and the senators on the ground saying how much they appreciated the work of the federal government, the work from this president. And I think that matters. I think that matters that the folks who are on the ground, the elected officials, are saying that they're receiving the help that they need to deal with this devastating issue. And that's what you're going to continue to hear from this administration, and that's what you're going to continue to see. Again, the administrator was there for 2 whole days on the ground by the president's request to make sure that the government has what they have, the local government has what they have, the people of Maui have what they have, and that's what you're going to see. When you talk about a dozen agencies on the ground helping and assisting, more than hundreds of FEMA personnel, that's what matters. That's what matters to make sure that they're actually seeing on the ground the people who know how to work this, who know how to deal with these type of devastating events, who can be helpful,